When it comes to relationships, your value is not something you hand over for someone else to measure. It's something you carry with you. But there are certain patterns that quietly chip away at how you're seen, especially in front of a man who's watching not just what you say, but how you carry yourself. One of the biggest killers of value is over-explaining. When you constantly justify why you feel a certain way, why you said something, or why you made a choice, it sends the message that you're seeking permission for your own feelings. You don't need to shrink your truth down to fit someone else's comfort level. Another is abandoning your boundaries. If you let someone talk you out of what you know is right for you, it doesn't look like compromise. It looks like you don't trust yourself. A man respects what you respect in yourself. And if you don't honor your own limits, he won't either. Then there's the habit of people pleasing. Always saying yes, always smoothing things over, always prioritizing his needs before your own. It might feel like love, but it reads as fear. Fear of being too much, fear of being left, fear of rocking the boat. The problem is, when you erase yourself for someone else, you train them to forget you matter. Jealousy and constant comparison also strip away your value. When you measure yourself against other women, when you assume he's looking elsewhere, you're not just doubting him, you're doubting your worth. A confident presence doesn't chase, doesn't compete, and doesn't beg for reassurance. And finally, silence in the face of disrespect. When you let comments slide, when you let patterns of behavior go unchecked, you teach him that his actions have no consequence. Speaking up doesn't create conflict, it creates clarity. And clarity is what separates a strong connection from a fragile one. Would you like me to also write the conclusion of this speech in Jefferson Fisher's style? The way you asked before? Over-explaining is one of the fastest ways to water down your presence. The moment you feel the need to pile on reasons for why you feel a certain way or why you made a decision, it stops sounding like confidence and starts sounding like a plea for approval. A man doesn't need a 10-step breakdown to understand your feelings. He needs to see that you stand by them. The more you justify, the more it looks like you don't trust your own voice. Confidence isn't in the length of your explanation. It's in the steadiness of your delivery. Sometimes the strongest statement is simply saying what you mean and leaving it there. When you constantly justify yourself, what you're really saying is, I don't trust that my choices or feelings are enough on their own. It turns every opinion into a debate where you're the one on trial. A man doesn't hear confidence in long-winded defenses. He hears uncertainty, and uncertainty chips away at respect. When you believe in your decisions, you don't need to dress them up or defend them to the point of exhaustion. The weight of your words comes from standing firm in them, not from stacking explanations on top. When you abandon your boundaries, you're teaching him that what matters to you can be negotiated away. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're guardrails that protect your self-respect. The moment you let someone push past them just to keep the peace, it tells him your comfort is optional. And if you don't take your limits seriously, he won't either. A man pays attention to how consistent you are with what you say you'll tolerate. Holding firm isn't about being difficult. It's about showing that your dignity is not for sale. A man doesn't respect what you say you want. He respects what you consistently enforce. Words without follow-through are just noise, and people quickly learn whether or not they can take you seriously. If you set a boundary but never act on it, it teaches him that your limits are flexible and your standards are negotiable. Respect grows when your actions line up with your words. It's not about threatening or demanding. It's about calmly showing that your values aren't up for compromise. People-pleasing may feel like kindness, but underneath it sends the message that you're afraid to be yourself. When every answer is yes, and every effort is about keeping him comfortable, it stops looking like care and starts looking like fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of not being enough on your own. The problem is, when you bend yourself to fit what someone else wants, you slowly erase your own identity. A man doesn't admire sacrifice that comes from insecurity. He respects a woman who knows when to give. When you constantly put his needs above your own, it sends the signal that your voice doesn't carry the same weight. Sacrifice without balance doesn't look like love. It looks like neglecting yourself. A man notices when you never ask for what you need, when you always step aside so he can step forward. That pattern teaches him that your priorities don't matter, and eventually he'll treat them that way. Value is shown when you honor your own needs, just as much as his, because real respect comes from mutual consideration, not one-sided giving. Jealousy might feel like proof you care, but what it really reveals is a lack of trust in yourself. When you question where he is, who he's looking at, or what he's doing, it doesn't make him feel wanted. It makes you look uncertain of your own worth. A man sees confidence in someone who believes she is enough without needing constant reassurance. Jealousy doesn't protect a relationship. It suffocates it. Well, the moment you trust yourself, you stop competing with shadows and start standing firm in the fact that you bring something no one else can. When you compare yourself to other women, you're sending the message that you don't believe in your own uniqueness. A man doesn't just notice the words you say, he notices the energy you carry. If you're always measuring yourself against someone else, you're silently telling him that you think they have something you lack. Lack? The truth is, comparison strips away the confidence that makes you stand out in the first place. He doesn't need you to be like anyone else. He needs to see that you believe you're already enough as you are. Confidence doesn't announce itself with loud words or constant reminders. It shows up in how you carry yourself. A woman who knows her worth doesn't need to chase after attention or compete for space because she understands that her presence is already valuable. When you're secure in who you are, you don't look over your shoulder wondering who else he's noticing. You stay grounded, calm, and steady, and that's what draws real respect. Confidence isn't about proving anything. It's about resting in the fact that you don't have to. Silence in the face of disrespect doesn't keep the peace. It gives permission. When you let the comments slide, when you brush off the behavior, when you swallow the hurt just to avoid conflict, you're teaching him that there are no consequences for crossing a line. What you allow is what will continue. A man learns how far he can go, not by what you say you expect, but by what you tolerate. Speaking up doesn't make you difficult, it makes you clear. And clarity is what keeps respect alive. When you don't speak up, you create space for the same behavior to repeat itself. What starts as one small dismissal or offhand comment can quietly grow into a pattern simply because it was never addressed. A man doesn't assume silence means hurt. He assumes silence means acceptance. And once that cycle takes hold, it becomes harder to undo. Addressing things early and directly doesn't push someone away. It sets the standard for how you expect to be treated moving forward. So, clarity builds respect because it removes the guessing game. When you say what you mean and stand by it, there's no room for him to question where you stand. Even if it feels uncomfortable in the moment, honesty creates certainty, and certainty earns trust. A man may not always like what you say, but he will respect the strength it takes to say it. Confusion leaves space for assumptions. But clarity leaves no doubt about your worth. Value isn't proven by what you claim. It's revealed by what you consistently do. A man pays more attention to your actions than to your words, because actions tell him what you truly believe about yourself. If you say you deserve respect but accept less, your behavior cancels out your message. When your choices align with your standards, you don't have to explain your worth. He sees it. The way you show up day after day speaks louder than any declaration you could make. Nah. The way you treat yourself sets the example for how he will treat you. If you speak down to yourself, dismiss your own needs, or constantly put yourself last, you're teaching him that's acceptable. Self-respect isn't just about what you demand from others. It's about how you live with yourself every day. When you honor your time, protect your energy, and value your own presence, you send a clear message that anyone in your life must do the same. A man learns your worth by watching how you live it, not how you explain it.